This is the Hidden Leaf Village's handsome devil, Rock Lee, and you're watching Anime Egotists. After this, you can do 51 sit-ups or watch all 51 episodes of Rock Lee and his ninja pals. Rock Lee. Leaf Hurricane!
Welcome back to the Anime Egotists, the best, worst, and all-around most interesting parts of anime. Hey, so sit back and enjoy the view, because the Anime Egotist content is made for myself and my co-host, and people like all of you. You got me, Foss, over here, and I'm joined by my co-host, who I think likes my intro better than it was last time. Say hello.
Pretty good this time. My name's Williamson.
That is right. And last time we talked about the worst arcs in Naruto. Not the worst arcs, but specifically the worst fights in Naruto. The fights that just are boring, uninteresting, don't even need to happen, and just nonsensical at times.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we talked about some of them having really bad animation, some of them having no payoffs. It just depends, but now we're getting into the part where it's the exact opposite. They have good payouts, the animation's amazing, and they give backstory. I mean, that's the big thing.
That's right. And a lot of these fights are obviously fights that everybody knows, but I tried to sneak in a few of my favorite fights that people don't really think about as much.
So just to get it out of the way, the one fight that we both absolutely agreed on and just want to talk about before we even really start our list is Rock Lee versus Gaara in the Chunin exams. We talked about it in the previous
right. Lee versus Gaara. Go ahead.
God, I mean, just that moment when you see Lee jump up to the top of the statue and Guy gives him the thumbs up to go ahead and do it, and he takes those weights off, and you just know shit got real.
And gosh, she's immediately like, Guy, you are too much. I'm like, yeah, but he gave us this awesome fight scene, so I guess I can learn to live with it. And obviously, like, the basic reason Gaara won was because of plot armor, but this is one of those few times I'm actually willing to give it a pass, because they need to kind of build Gaara as basically a freak.
Yeah, I mean, my question now is, though, was Lee ever actually going all out when he was fighting Neji? He always says he never beat Neji, but the fact that he can move at that speed, and even Neji mentioned, I think, in this fight that he could hardly keep up.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that. I think it's one of those things, because remember, the 8 gates isn't just something to pull out whenever you want. They said it was specifically to protect your way of thinking or to protect somebody you care about. Maybe just in training with Neji, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to use it. That being said, the fact that he's a 13-year-old who can open 5 of the gates, well, 6 of them in the video games, but that's a whole rabbit hole of a mess. But still, and it's one of those fights where the flashbacks actually really add to it. Like, everybody complains about Naruto flashbacks, all this, and that, but it actually helps build up everything. They're just long enough that you learn some stuff, but they're not too long that it distracts from the fight.
Exactly. And the other big part about this fight is actually something I recently learned. Based on if those clouds of dust drop weighing that much, each one has to weigh over a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, like learning the science behind how much weight was actually on his legs is like, what?
Yeah, part of me thinks the only thing that would make this fight better is if he just actually thrown the weights at Gaara, and the second the sand caught them, he's like, oh, that's the problem. Because remember, the second he starts moving after the weights, Gaara's like, oh, it's like, it's one of the few times we see Gaara early in the series like shocked or even somewhat disturbed, and by the end, he was messed up. If he wasn't such a sociopath, he probably would have known it. He probably would have respected Lee, and then he did what he did.
True. And I guess at this point they kind of had to nerf Lee once they realized what they had done, because okay, well, no one that's left can really keep up with him that's in the Chunin exams, so crap, we'll just nerf him and injure him and maybe bring him back later and then never have him get this strong again.
Yeah, the injury was all it honestly kind of needed to happen. It built up that much more sympathy for Lee, gave him more of a story, and gave one of the best 100th episodes in anime history, just with Guy and Lee talking about everything. Honestly, it was that fight really showed everybody that this is a different type of anime, and it's one that people should keep their eyes on. So obviously, Rock Lee and Gaara. We couldn't do this list without that list. Even we're not that disappointing, mostly.
Yeah, and since we both 100% agreed on this, that's why we didn't do this on either of our actual lists.
Yeah,
it's by itself one of the best fights.
Yeah, one of the best fights in anime, shonen, Naruto, whatever. Anyways.
Do you want to kick us off this time?
Sure. And my first fight, Lee versus Gaara. Okay, never mind. Okay, but in that same vein, I'm going to specifically say this is kind of two fights, but they're both basically the same thing. Lee versus Kimimaro. So after Naruto has been done getting his ass kicked and all of his other nine-tailed clones by Kimimaro, Sasuke would run off and Kimimaro was about to kill Naruto because he was an idiot and wasn't paying attention. And all of a sudden, our boy, our hero, Rock Lee, shows up out of nowhere and says, Naruto, go fight. It's like, but what about your injury? Shut up. Go fight. Go get Sasuke. You gave Sakura the thumbs up. You got to go. And one of the simplest things I love about this fight is in the beginning when Naruto starts to run off and Kimimaro tries to take a slash at him. Not Gaara. Lee catches it and says, I don't like being ignored. And Kimimaro's like, this guy's strong. To me, that's so awesome because it shows, sure, Naruto's pretty strong. He's pretty effective, but there are people out there who are stronger than him, even when they're handicapped, because Lee still wasn't at full strength yet. Mm-hmm. So to me, to kind of show that just because he's the main character, there are people stronger than him. I don't know why. It's so simple and it's seemingly such a throwaway line, but I still love it. I still love that Naruto still isn't technically the strongest. There are people ahead of him.
Yeah, and I mean, so for those of you who don't realize which fight he's talking about, this is Rock Lee's comeback fight in the Sasuke retrieval arc.
Yes, which I hate to say it, I think the manga handled it slightly better because in the anime, right when they're about to leave for the Sasuke retrieval arc, Neji's like, "Oh, Lee, your surgery, it went well, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And the manga, actually in the manga, he hasn't had the surgery yet, and then he shows up immediately afterwards, which adds a layer of suspense to it. Like, could we lose Sasuke and Lee? I don't know if I could have handled that. But the fight starts. It's pretty basic. Lee tells Kimimaro, hey, can you just give me a second to drink my medicine? And Kimimaro's like, yeah, dude, go for it. And of course, it's not medicine, it's sake. And it's honestly one of the most hilarious fights, but it's also kind of awesome because we know he's not straining his body with the Hidden Lotus, because if he did use the 8 gates, there's no telling how the fight would have gone. But it was still so awesome to see such a creative looking fight that leaned a little towards the goofy side, but it was still awesome.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, and again, this is for fans of the show who've watched through in order from the beginning of the show. This is a big comeback because we've had the Chunin training arc since then the Hokage retrieval arc, and then I think one more arc, and then we finally get this, and this is towards the end of this arc. We finally get Lee, so it's been over 100 episodes almost by the time we get Lee to come back and be a badass again. So
yeah, and the whole thing, and the way I say this is sort of two fights, especially to me when Gaara shows up, because we all know things are kind of uneasy because Gaara's like, basically crippled Lee, but at the same time, like we're kind of happy to see Gaara. We're a little uneasy about it, but at the same time, he looks kind of cool and kind of badass as a hero. Oh, and the whole time, like Gaara, I don't know. Something about Gaara in that fight is just super cool to me. And of course, at the end, when Kimimaro pops up in his second form and is about to kill them both, but dies, there's something almost kind of haunting about that. Basically saying, if he didn't get sick and die, he would have killed both of us and would have been done with it. There's something cool about that when everybody involved is allowed to look good.
Yeah, and Kimimaro is one of my favorite and least favorite, only because he was in the show for so little time, but the fact that he has such a cool with the bone weapons that he can create. I mean,
Yeah.
it's but the fact that he's dying of some sort of disease and he was supposed to be, I think, Orochimaru's next vessel, and that changes and all that because he's sick.
Yeah, if we ever get this Dream Naruto game where we get our own type of jutsu, I want to learn whatever the hell Kimimara's jutsu are. All right, some people will be like, but it's a blood jutsu. You'd have to be part of that clan. I'm like, okay. What's the issue? What's the issue? What's the
I
issue
think they're
here?
all dead except for him, but again, that's not stopped them from bringing people who have different blood jutsus anyway. So
Yeah, but overall, Lee versus Kimimaro and Lee and Gara versus Kimimaro. That's my fight. I love that fight.
all right, that's a pretty good one. I'm going to go with a very early fight in the series.
Okay.
Team 7 versus Zabuza.
Is this when they were just to clear up? Is this when they were just fighting Zabuza, or is this when Haku showed up in the second fight?
I'm going to start with just Zabuza, so the first
Okay.
one.
All right, that's
because, I mean, throughout this time, we've pretty much only seen them arguing. That's all Sasuke and Naruto have done. They haven't gotten along. But the fact that they come up with this insane plan and are able to actually make it work is actually really amazing with the what is it, Shadow Shuriken?
Yep. Well, that's one of the
It's the Shadow Wind Shuriken. That's it.
Yeah, it's something like that. I remember when I was a kid and I first saw it, like, oh, that's a big ass shuriken. And he throws it and he misses. I'm like, oh, well, what's next? And then a second one comes out of nowhere. I'm like, where did he get a second one? Those things, I'm surprised one of those things fits in the backpack. And obviously, with the end, I was like, oh, that.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this fight, and then again, it shows that there are some pretty strong people out there with Zabuza being able to capture Kakashi, who at this point has been shown to be the strongest person we've seen.
Right.
And then again, we get to see Kakashi be a badass at the end of the fight where he pretty much matches everything and is able to use, I think it's Water Dragon at the exact same time using
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I also I specifically remember because I don't know how anybody would know this fight, but once the second shuriken comes by, Zabuza jumps up, which I thought, okay, that's smart, that's kind of cool. Well, and obviously the shuriken turns out to be Naruto, and he throws a kunai at him, and Zabuza dodges, and it lets Kakashi out. It's one of the most badass scenes in the show. Well, but I I specifically remember the abridged series saying, oh, I knew you were going to dodge the second one. That's why I disguised myself as the shuriken, so you would let go of Sensei. And Kakashi says, okay, that's great and all, but how about next? If that's the case, why didn't you go behind him and jump on his back and just start stabbing him point blank? And Naruto's like, I'm like, that would have been cool, but this was badass enough. This was cool enough. And let's not forget Sakura, who did
I think this is where a lot of that starts to become her character, because she stands in front of the person with a knife the entire time, and that's about it.
You know, it kind of leads into, I guess it's an honorable mention for me when they talk about because that's why I was asking, was it just Zabuza fight or was this the fight with Haku too? And I specifically remember Kakashi thinking to himself, if I go and save Naruto and Sasuke from Haku, Zabuza will kill the old man. And if I use a bunch of shadow clones, then Zabuza is going to do the same thing too. And I thought to myself, but Sakura's protecting the old man. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd have to stay behind too. I don't trust that girl.
Yeah, so it's just a fun fight, and again, I love the Demon Wind Shuriken or whatever it's called, the big one that they use. I wish that they had used it more often in the series.
I wish they would transform into objects more often, but that's since apparently you can do that.
I just imagine Naruto being thrown by Sasuke, and Sasuke knows that it's him because there's that whole reaction scene where he catches it.
Yeah.
what part of Naruto am I grabbing?
Oh no, oh no. We don't have to think. We don't have to think about that. We'll leave that to the deviant art artists. We'll leave it to them.
All right. Your
Anyways,
next one?
okay. This is. I'm gonna be honest. This is a fight I never really enjoyed that much as a kid, but now that I'm older, I can appreciate more. In the Sasuke retrieval arc, Neji versus Kidomaru. This is a little bit of a weird fight for me because as a kid, I was all about the super powerful attacks and all this other stuff. But it's kind of an interesting one just in the beginning when they all have to escape from Kidomaru's web, and Neji's the one who says, of course, everybody, get out of here. Get out of here. Let me handle this. I can take this guy. It's a really nice mix of, how do I put this? Long range attacks versus close range combat, because we all know Neji's not exactly a long range fighter. And seeing him deal with all the different spiders and tactics and everything. And also, Kidomaru's actually kind of a strange character because he has all this stuff protecting him, like his sweat and everything, which is fucking nasty when you really start to think about it. But he's just kind of a unique character, and I like that this was kind of a battle of intelligence rather than just brute strength. And there weren't a lot of completely flashy attacks. Neji basically just kills them by hitting his pressure points. No super filled chakra attack or hard explosion thingy. It was just a couple pressure points at the end after he'd worn Kidomaru down, and that's how the fight ends. It's honestly, it's a lot simpler than most of the other fights, but that's kind of what I like about it.
True. My real problem with most of the fights in the Sasuke retrieval arc are just, I know it's because they're in a hurry, so that's why they're trying to make it seem like, okay, one person came behind to fight each one. But they're just, I don't know. They drag some of these fights on long. Like the Choji one goes on a little long.
Oh, don't say that. That's another fight that's on my list, actually.
I mean, I still enjoy them because, again, you get to see just how powerful these allies of the main character are. Because, I mean, we get to see, I think this is the first time we see Shadow Strangle with Shikamaru's fight.
Right.
We get to see the butterfly jutsu with Choji.
I was about to say, should I just go ahead and talk about that fight since we're already here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say, do you have anything else you want to say besides the fights drag a little bit for Neji versus Kidomaru?
Yeah, and again, this kind of goes for all of these fights, in my opinion. But again, I haven't watched these fights in a long time.
I've been recently watching them, and that, I guess, the next fight, Choji versus Jirobo. This is once again another simple fight, and it kind of just showed Choji's not a pushover. Like he lost against Dosu in the tuning exams, but that's because Dosu's a badass who, like Kimimaru, we should have seen more of. But regardless, it shows that just the lengths that Choji is willing to go. Oh, and we get the flashback of him and Shikamaru, like the best friends in the show, how they met, how they became friends, and Choji doesn't have a super sad backstory, but I kind of appreciate that. He was just basically picked on for being slow and a little chubby. It's not as complicated as all the other ones, but it didn't really have to be. Not to mention, we got to see beforehand Choji's human boulder form break out of Jirobo's earth prison technique and save them all. And just, we get to see, like I said, we get to see how far Choji's willing to go and basically taking all the pills he needs to beat Jirobo, and that butterfly technique that I don't think completely got explained, but it didn't have to. And just the finish is amazing, and it makes Choji look great. Right before some people thought he was going to die, I believed it for about half a second, but it would have broken my heart if they had just built him up just to kill him at that point. But they didn't, and I'm so happy for that.
Well, that's a big part of the thing. Didn't he believe he would die from taking the pill? Because like his father told him that at his level, he could only take the first two. If he took the last one, he would die.
Yeah, but then again, it's also because the medical team and the Lee village just got there just in the nick of time to save him. And plus, it also leads to, after the fight, one of the more underrated, heartwarming moments of the series when Choji is about to keel over. He sees he's that the group has left these notes for him carved into the trees, like, hey, hurry up, we believe in you, all this other stuff. And the whole thing of him as a kid was he didn't have any friends, but just to see that in his potential final moments that he had made a lot of friends, his friends were counting on him. It's really one of the more heartwarming moments that nobody seems to talk about. It doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Yeah, Choji's one of those characters that when he's on screen, you see a lot of times he's not used in the best just because he's usually used as a background character or to clear the advancement for Shikamaru to come in and do something.
Right.
But here, yeah, he gets his moment. Again, I almost wish that they had done, even though I said that the fights are a little drawn out, I wish that they had had a chance to bring in all of the characters. So pretty much it's everybody going after Sasuke. I think that could have been really cool because I know like they've always talked in the anime they always talk about wanting to have been part of the team.
Yeah, some of those characters got no love. Like Choji's one of those characters who was done, who seemingly was good in Naruto, was good in Shippuden, and seemingly has been good in Boruto. He's one of those characters that hasn't been messed up yet.
I do love that. Just to spoil one thing in Boruto,
For it.
probably one of the best parts is the fact that Choji lost to Hinata in a ramen eating contest.
Oh my god, that woman scares me sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyways, you should. What are your fights? I think you have two that you can get out of the way. Since I got two that I got out of the way.
Yeah. So my two are kind of connected as well. I'm gonna do the Asuma versus Hidan fight first.
Okay.
So this one, I mean, it's such a unique jutsu with the, I guess it's like blood sacrifice or whatever.
Right.
I don't
right.
remember what they actually call it off the top of my head, but
Yeah, they know what you're talking about. It's cool.
you know, the fact that Hidan can connect himself to his victims, and then pretty much if he attacks himself, he doesn't take any damage, but in the other thing. And then this sets the tone for the rest of the series pretty much that you don't know if the main character is going to die because Asuma had been part of the series since like episode 6. And now we're in through all of that. If you've watched the filler at the end of Naruto, you've seen him a lot. And then the fact that they kill him off, pretty much trying to save Naruto or prevent Naruto's kidnapping, I think is this part.
Yeah.
It's sad, and of course you feel it for his team, which is Choji, Shikamaru, and Ino.
Yeah.
It's
I will say one of the most badass moments of that whole scene is when they concoct that whole plan. Shikamaru, Asuma, and the two other guys who we all know they have names. We all know they've done stuff in the show, but I don't remember them. You know who I'm talking about? Those two Jonin guys.
the one doesn't one of them have the like vein that goes through his face or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and the part where they actually successfully come up with a plan to cut Hidan's head off. When I saw that, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, that was so cool. Because it was like, oh no, I'll just attach it. I'm like, okay, so he took up sewing in the Akatsuki. That's interesting. But no, that was. I've always said Hidan was one of my favorite villains in Naruto, but that like was a huge gut punch to see. Like, oh my god, they actually killed Asuma. And the aftermath, of course, when Shikamaru's holding it all in and his dad just tells him, let it out. It's okay to let it out. Oh, that just, it hurts so bad.
God, yeah, it's one of the most emotional fights and has probably the most emotional ending to a fight in the entire series.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of kills it is when Asuma just basically tells Shikamaru, oh, by the way, I knocked up Kurenai, so you got babysitting duty. He didn't, obviously he doesn't say it like that, despite that would have been hilarious, but you know what I mean. It's just kind of when Asuma says, the king is this kid. And I don't remember that kid doing anything in particular.
A little bit in Boruto from what I've seen, but that's about it.
That doesn't help me. But regardless, I agree with that. Such an emotional yet badass fight at some moments, and led to Shikamaru becoming such a more integral character to the show.
Mhm. So this next one is, since I'm going to do my two of mine real quick to catch up, is kind of the sequel to this. And I mentioned it in our previous video about, I think, Arcs the Root Fix.
Yeah.
And that's Asuma versus his team. It's the only time I think in the war arc that you really understand like the seriousness of you're facing the consciousness of your mentors, your friends, your family, your father figures, your mother figures, and the fact that they don't want to fight him. I mean, they're breaking down and crying, and like I think Choji has a moment where he doesn't want to fight because it's Asuma.
Yeah, I was gonna say he specifically seems to have the hardest time coping with it.
But they all do. I mean, because I know at the end of the fight they're all broken down and that's, I mean, an amazing idea. And again, I wish that there had been more characters that we could have seen that had connections that we knew of. So I guess that would mean I would have wanted more characters killed off earlier in the series so we could see fights. But
then again, we got Hayate, the guy from the Chunin exam, the guy who's always coughing, versus his fiance. I'd say I don't remember her name if I'm going to be 1,000% honest. But yeah, I know what you mean. I would have liked that too.
We get a few others with the when the seven swordsmen of the mist show up, and it's like, okay, well, we get Zabuza back, but Zabuza only has really connection with Kakashi, and then it's like they were enemies. And again, that's kind of cool, but
I was about to say, but towards the end, though, they weren't enemies, so I did like how they kind of wrapped it up.
True, but again, just if seeing more of the fights of people, I guess we did get a few because we didn't get Sai with his brother.
Yeah, that was heart-wrenching for me. I know a lot of people didn't like Sai at first. I was seemingly one of the few people who always liked him, but that was one of the more underrated fights. But go ahead.
But yeah, I just think if there had been more like the Asuma versus his team, where it's someone important, where it's built, it wasn't really built up because you didn't expect it until they were resurrected, but
yeah, it's just like if I recall, it kind of doesn't it cut to them already fighting Asuma, so it's kind of, rather than just an emotional reveal of, oh my god, it's Asuma, it's just like boom, Asuma.
It might. I don't know. This one felt for me just because I felt that it was connected to that first one.
No, I co-sign on to that completely. I'm trying to find Hayate's Yugo, that's her name. The Anbu Black, seemingly like the one Anbu Black Up who knows how to do her job.
Is that the purple-haired girl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, I can co-sign onto those fights. So, am I next?
Yep.
Okay. This now, I feel bad for this character because I put him on my worst fight list. But at the same time, he also had a pretty badass fight early on. And that character is Shino. Shino versus Zaku in the Chunin exam arc. Now, this is like, I want to say the second or third fight in the Chunin exam. Yeah, maybe it was the second. And it followed Sasuke versus Yori, which I said before was not that great of a fight. Hey, now, one of the things is we kind of knew about everybody else, the Konoha 11's powers, but we never got to see that much of it in action. And just seeing, because we saw Dosu and how badass he was, and we saw Zaku was kind of okay. But we really, look, Zaku did not look good in this fight, but it's one of the few times I'm willing to allow it because we all learned that Shino is a monster. Like, he's legitimately terrifying. So, the fight begins, and Shino basically blocks a punch. And he summons a bunch of insects behind Zaku, and he basically says, okay, dude, you got two choices. It's you can either fight me and have the bugs come after you, or you can fight the bugs and have me come after you. either way, I have an ace up the sleeve because if we remember, Zaku had a broken arm. He could only deal with one enemy. He couldn't deal with both. So Zaku's like, oh no, I have both my hands now. So basically you can suck it. But then it's revealed that when Shino blocked that punch, and his insects plugged up the holes in Zaku's arms, and Shino has, I want to say it's one of the more badass lines he has, but it is kind of a cool line. He basically says, now we all know that having an ace up your sleeve is important, but having two aces is even better. And he basically knocks his ass out with one punch because he's not able to control his chakra. And there are holes all over Zaku's arms. And apparently in the manga, his arms like legitimately blew off. And Hayate just looks at him and he's like, okay, this one's over. Shino wins. And as a kid, I'm like, so Shino's gonna, he's a bad guy, right? And as I read more, I'm like, no, he's not. He's one of the good guys. He's just terrifying.
Yeah, Shino is probably the character done the absolute worst in the entire series, only because they build him up in this arc and then the next arc when they're going after Gaara, and then drop him from like until the end of the series. It's like, what?
Yeah, and they give him this weird quirk of nobody being able to notice him, which I hate that. I hate that trope in anime, the character that nobody notices. I hate that so much, but that's another video. Oh, but regardless, Shino's a monster. I wouldn't mess with him.
Seriously, and I mean, part of the whole thing is that he can literally drain another person's chakra with the insects, so he could pretty much win any fight as long as it lasts long enough.
Yeah, Lee versus Shino would have been a very interesting fight.
Yeah, and again, Shino probably should have been also promoted to Chunin after that, because even though he didn't get his actual fight.
Oh, that made me so mad. Conqueror's just like, I give up. Just like, dude, you couldn't have fought for like 2 minutes. You could 2 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. But it's just like, no, I give up.
But the fact that doesn't he stall him for a good while, so
yeah,
that should have counted for him at the end, and been like, okay, well, he did so much and is already shown overpoweredness. Yeah, here's your jacket. Go ahead and be a Chunin.
Here's your jacket. Go ahead and be a Chunin. You're already the most useful person on your team. So second most. Number one being Akamaru, of course, but you know what I mean.
Yes, of course, Akamaru.
Yeah, but once again, Shino's a badass. If we're ever in the Naruto world, we can't piss him off.
We'll take him out for ramen. He deserves it.
Yeah, all right, works for me. Anyways, what's your next fight?
So my next one is going to be Minato versus Obito.
Oh, that's a good one.
So this one is pretty much Naruto's origin story episodes. I think it's like 3 or 4 episodes that they do where they reveal what happened the night Naruto was born, the night the Nine Tails attacked the village. And I mean, it's an amazing fight because as you see the fourth Hokage darting all over the place trying to protect Naruto and his wife, and prevent Obito, who doesn't know it's Obito, from getting to him. And it's just, you see Obito's phasing ability, and you see the Thunder God, I think is the name of the move, right? Is that
the move where he teleports and hits the Rasengan?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's one of the most. Yeah, that's one of the most unfair attacks in the whole show. Like, you can just like, here, catch this kunai, okay, and then he just teleports above you and just hits a Rasengan. That shouldn't be allowed. But it's one of those techniques that somebody probably should have picked up on after he died. But it's just like, nope.
I know it's revealed throughout the story that it was invented by the second, mastered by the fourth, and then it's pretty much possible to learn because you have to have a specific way. I know there's a seal involved, but it looks really good, and it's a really epic fight where they just teleportation, phasing through each other.
Yeah, not to mention how flippin' ominous Obito is throughout this. Like we'd seen Toby by that point, who, in my opinion, is probably still the best version of him. I think Toby was hilarious, but there's like something really ominous and kind of scary because we had known at this point the fourth Hokage was long dead, but there was a tiny part of us that still was rooting for him to win, rooting for him to succeed, despite the fact we'd already known the result by this point. And not that Obito specifically was the one to kill him, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, they die because of the Nine Tails and using the Reaper Death Soul to seal it in Naruto.
And then Naruto became besties with the Nine Tails.
Yeah, but it took him long enough.
Yeah, it all he had to do was seemingly learn his name, which he probably could have asked at some point. It's just like, so I know you killed my parents and everything, but you got a name? Jeffrey. Okay, fair enough.
Right. We're best buddies now. I'm taking you out for ramen.
I'm sure he would have been fine with that. I hope they should make the bowls a little bigger though. But no, I know what you mean. This fight was unique. It was, like I said, there was an element of darkness to it that I really appreciated. So yeah, I like that fight.
I mean, up until this point, they pretty much only said that the fourth.
One more time.
The fourth Hokage is supposed to be the strongest of all the Hokages at this point.
Perfect. Anyways, anything else for that fight?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. Speaking of darkness, this one's going to be kind of a strange one, but Naruto versus Dark Naruto. Do you know the fight I'm talking about?
This is the one where before he masters the chakra of the Nine Tails, right?
Very good. Okay, so this fight isn't necessarily good in terms of the action or everything, but first of all, I do like that show that sometimes the darkness in somebody can be stronger at first. Because Naruto kind of gets his ass kicked by his dark form. And his dark form basically doesn't... It's basically a version of Naruto had he lost hope, which was always kind of an interesting concept to me. Like, I remember somebody once pointed out to me that Kakashi is Sasuke if Sasuke had kept hope or had found hope, while what's his name? While Obito is Naruto had he lost hope. And I thought that was a really brilliant way of thinking about it. So it was kind of interesting to see what would have happened had Naruto not befriended Iruka, Sasuke, Sakura, etc. But I think, and I know it's kind of a cop-out in the end because Naruto doesn't fight him. He embraces, yeah, there's darkness in my heart, but I can't let it take over me. It's still a part of me. He ends up hugging his dark form. It's like I said, it's not a brilliant fight from a fighting perspective, but it does encapsulate the series in a brilliant way that I don't think it's talked about enough.
Yeah, I agree. It's because they mentioned, I mean, Gaara has the dark side originally, but Naruto's able to help fix him. You see it in a lot of characters, I think, that like what could have happened. Okay, well, it's miserable in my village, so I went down the dark path instead. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting.
It's a very simple fight, but it's a fight I like. But I don't want to dwell on that fight too much. Do you have a next one?
Yeah. So my next one, so we each have, I just want to make sure I have the right number. We each have one more, then honorable mentions, then our final one, right?
Sure.
Unless you don't have to.
I don't. Our lists are kind of all over the place. So yeah, I can do that. I can do that. One more honorable mentions, and then one more. I can do that.
All right. So my next one is Naruto versus Sasuke in the Valley of Them Part 1.
Okay. Never mind.
This one, we finally get Sasuke's backstory, what happened to his clan, because it's been hinted at and talked about. We know Itachi killed them, but that's all we know, and we get so much. I mean, backstory. I think this was the first full arc I watched of Naruto.
Oh, okay.
I kind of came in at a couple weird spots because back then it was kind of harder to watch in order. So I missed like
one new episode a week. It was, and no reruns. It was not help. It was not a good. It wasn't good.
so I remember watching a few episodes during the tuning exams and during the Gara fight, but then I think I saw the Rasengan on once, and then I saw pretty much from I think it was when Neji starts fighting his person through till the end in actual order.
Right. Okay.
So, and then I saw the end, and then I stopped watching because again we got to filler. But
I kept watching.
But this fight, I mean, and it's animated really well, and you see so much, and you really realize just how connected Naruto and Sasuke actually are. And it's heartbreaking watching Sasuke throwing this away to pursue his revenge instead of working with the people he could to get justice instead.
I was about to say, yeah, if he stayed, he probably could have gotten it at some point.
Yeah, he really could. But
yeah, but I agree. This is a brilliant fight. There are a couple of things that haven't really aged as well for me. Like, for example, I kind of start to realize that Fire Style Jutsu in Naruto doesn't really do anything. Like, I don't think I can name one character who's been beaten and defeated by Fire Style techniques. They kind of just seem to happen and people just run through them somehow.
True.
Then again, they were surrounded by a giant thing of water, so I get. Then again, that just makes Sasuke less stupid, but either way. Hey, but no, this is a really cool fight. The flashbacks drag a little bit, but it does help build the story. It also helps build that Itachi did not at first. Like, Itachi might be a little more complex than we think, because at that point, we just thought he was a cold, brutal killer. But then we learned maybe he had a reason for it, but we still hated him. And then several episodes later, we learned, oh, that's why he did it. Yeah. Poor Itachi.
God, yeah, when we finally get the end of this story so instead of Sasuke's view, we get Itachi's view of it. And you see that his dad's just sitting there and it's like, do what you must. It's like, oh my God.
Itachi never found happiness in that show, and it's heartbreaking. It honestly, it kind of makes me. I know everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it makes me mad. It kind of makes me mad when people say Itachi never should have been revealed as a good guy. He should have just stayed He should have just stayed as a villain, a cold blood killer. I'm like, that would not have been nearly as interesting. Plus, it would not have helped Sasuke turn back around in the end, because it's basically because of Itachi and Naruto to an extent that Sasuke does eventually see the light again.
I wish that they had actually done more where it's revealed like only the third and like two and his advisors or Tsunade knows that Itachi's actually on their side still because she's now Hokage. So and send someone out and they retrieve notes that he left for them about the remaining members of the Akatsuki, and I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have been, but they did like getting back to the fight. It was great. Like even like it makes it even better when you realize that in hindsight, it actually did lead to some continuity down the line. So yeah, I can side with that.
So go ahead for your next one.
Wait, but if I went first, aren't we on our honorable mentions now? Remember, I went first. So. Okay, honorable mentions: Haku versus Naruto and Sasuke. Now, we kind of talked about this a little bit before, so I won't go too long, but it's nice to see Naruto and Sasuke working together for seemingly one of the first times in the show, and just seeing how badass and OP at times Haku's powers were. And of course, in the end, when Sasuke kind of sacrifices himself and he says, it shows that they've already learned from Kakashi, that Kakashi's message of, you guys have to work together. You guys have to stand up for each other. You have to have each other's backs. Even though we know Naruto and Sasuke can't stand each other at this point, or, the whole show. So it's nice to see just all of that come together, and we get to see the Nine Tails form for the first time. And also just the funny part in the beginning when Naruto shows up late and Sasuke is like, oh, that's brilliant. Naruto can take these guys out from the outside and help help me while I'm on the inside. And Naruto just pops into the inside of the jutsu. He's like, hey, Sasuke, I'm here to help. And Sasuke's like, you idiot, what are you doing? Get out. And it's just like, it's one of Sasuke's funnier moments in the show, which we didn't really get that often, but when they happened, they were pretty hilarious.
Yeah, this fight probably does a better job than the first fight where it's Team 7 versus Zabuza to set the tone for the series, because again, it has comedy, which the show has throughout pretty much. It has good action, and then it has payout because in the end, what's his name dies.
Haku
dies, and this kind of leads to a change of heart for Zabuza, and so it's
and it leads to everyone's philosophy of you get stronger when you fight to protect someone, which became his Naruto's Nindo, his ninja way. They stopped saying,
leave it.
Oh yeah. Well, so he needed a replacement for that, so I'm glad he stopped. That's one of the worst catchphrases ever, I swear. But regardless, Haku versus Naruto and Sasuke.
Yeah, I can agree that that's a good honorable mention. So for my honorable mention, I'm going to go with Neji versus Hinata in the Chunin exams.
Okay.
My main thinking, the main reason this is an honorable mention, because it shows that not everybody who has the exact same jutsu are on the same level. I know that he's supposed to be a year older, so he's supposed to be stronger, but the fact that he has so much more power than her.
Yeah.
The main issue with this fight is that it has no payoff and was on our worst list from what should have been a good payout. So
yeah, I want to like this fight more than I do, but that is the thing. There's no payoff. Like, man, Neji didn't have a lot of payoffs for everybody. Lee never beat him. Hinata never beat him. I don't know. Neji's an odd one. It's odd how they wrote his character. It's not frustrating. It's just kind of strange.
The only payout I can really think of that this fight comes is almost 400 episodes later, and that's Neji's death.
That which to my opinion still shouldn't have even happened. It's not because I like Neji. It's more of just because it didn't make a whole lot of sense when you really start to think about it for more than 4 seconds.
I know, but that's kind of the only payout for this fight is, well, here he's actually trying to kill Hinata for actual probably justified reasons.
Oh no, I don't have a response to that besides my face. Go on, continue. You sociopath.
Well, the fact that his clan is so old-fashioned that they killed his dad instead of his the leader of the clan.
Yeah, but that wasn't Hinata's fault. Hinata didn't say that was a good. She wasn't part of the family meeting.
True.
Yeah, and I do love the whole time with this fight. That it is a lot simpler. It's just them hitting each other a bunch of times, which could get boring, but it doesn't drag on for too long. I will say though, I don't know. It's one of those things where it did show how powerful Neji was. I don't know. This fight's complicated for me. Like, I don't really know. I feel like every time I rewatch it, my opinion changes. So I could hate it next time I watch it. I don't know.
Yeah, again, it's one of those. It doesn't deserve to be a top fight, but it has reason, and I think that's why it's an okay fight and worth an honorable mention.
Yeah, I can side with that. Okay, so my next honorable mention.
Go ahead.
This is going to be a little bit of a shock that it's only an honorable mention, but it's partially because it breaks my heart to watch. Jiraiya versus Pain. First of all, this is like the first time we see Jiraiya in Sage mode, and so unfortunately, it's kind of the last time we see him in Sage mode. But it's so cool to me that we always knew Jiraiya was powerful, but seeing him like this and just seeing how flippin' strong he is and all these different techniques he could use that Naruto, I don't think, learned any of them for the most part.
Yeah, no, I can't think of
Yeah, but
one.
like he learned a couple, but not like there just wasn't a lot. And Pain himself is a cool villain, and his story does make sense for the most part. And so just seeing all this stuff, and I thought it was brilliant that the fight took place like in the Rain Village, and like because it was brilliant setting wise, and of course just the other just sadness of seeing. Oh, by the way, there's six of these assholes. There's six of these assholes running around, and unfortunately, it ends with one of the most badass Rasengan moments, and Jiraiya sinking to the water and dying. Which I'm still not over that. Still not over that.
Yeah, it's another one of those moments where you feel that things are changing in the series.
Yeah. I will say though, what probably I think one of the things that makes it all the more tragic is that you can kind of tell Jiraiya knows I'm not coming back this time. I am like there's part of him that knows this is my last mission, which kind of makes it all the more sucky that it's just like, oh, by the way, I'm six dudes. What are you gonna do? And then in the end, when Naruto beats it, and it's like, I'll bring back everybody. Can you bring back Jiraiya? Uh, about that. But yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I really feel that this could have been an interesting thing had they brought him back for the Ninja War, for the Great War at the end.
Oh, they would have been fucked. That
But no, but
village would have been
having
destroyed.
him versus Tsunade, I think could have been where
Oh,
she admits that she loved him and regrets not telling him, and he just and do like a Star Wars thing. I know, as he breaks apart.
heck, you could have had Tsunade and Orochimaru fight him because I remember when they brought back Orochimaru and they said, "Oh, by the way, Jiraiya died." Orochimaru was sad about it. I'm like, weren't you trying to kill him like 2 or 3 years ago? Why the hell are you changing your mind? She's like, oh, well, I guess I didn't want him dead. I guess I didn't know didn't want him dead till he died. I'm like, dude,
But I think that
that's not helpful.
I know why they didn't bring him back, just because they never revealed where his body was or anything. I think to
Yeah.
Kabuto, but I think that would have been a cool thing to do.
Yeah. But Jiraiya versus Pain, still talking to my therapist about it. What's your next honorable mention?
I just had it because I just thought of a different one that I wanted to do. What is that one? It was
Toby, Naruto, Datara, Kakashi.
I can't remember it now.
And if you think about it, then just say it. But just whatever. What was your other one?
Let's see. Actually, we're pretty much I'm out of honorable mentions because I think I know what your number one fight is going to be.
Okay, what do you think my number one fight is, or one of my fights, or you know what I
Naruto
mean?
versus Sasuke Part 2.
Oh, actually, no, no, actually, it wasn't that. No, no.
And then that'll be one of my honorable mentions. The only issue I have with this fight is that there's almost no build up for it. So this one takes place at the very end of the series. They've defeated Kaguya, and Sasuke traps all the tailed beasts and declares that he's going to be the next Hokage.
Because of course.
I'm going to take over the village, pretty much, is what his mindset, and I'm going to fix it. And it's like, yeah, you've been a rogue ninja. You've attempted to kill everybody. You're lucky you're not being arrested right now. Fuck it, let's fight.
Yeah. So besides this kind of sloppy start, this was probably the fight that got me back into Naruto because like I kind of taken a I feel like we'd all taken a break at certain points, but this was the part where I'm like, you know what? This was one of the few times I actually finished the manga before I finished the anime, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'll just watch it. I'll watch it. The fight will be good. The animation was kind of
They changed it to the movie animation that they were going to use for I think it was Naruto the Last, which is a slightly higher quality, but it's different from the rest of the series, so it kind of throws you off.
yeah, that's different. Different's a nice way of putting it, but this was a cool fight just to see in the end. And like these guys are basically going to be fighting forever, and they both ended up losing an arm because of it. Because yeah,
And I mean, so pretty much this fight could have been, if they had both been uninjured from the war and at full strength at the start of the fight, there probably wouldn't have been anything left from that. What is it? I forgot what the valley's called.
I thought it was just called
The final valley or something.
Sure, why not? Sure, I'm sure somebody will correct us at some point in our lives, but sure, we all know what you're talking about.
But there would pretty much be nothing left, I think, if they were at full strength. It would just be a crater, and it's kind of is, but there's still chunks of things that are recognizable there. So we're especially after they're injured and are just lying there.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's your final honorable mention.
Yep.
So I'm kind of surprised that this made my list, but this is my last one: Naruto and Guy versus Kisame.
That is a good one.
Yeah, first of all, it's like first of all, we know Guy and Kisame's rivalry. Kisame always wants to fight Guy. Guy doesn't remember Kisame for some. How do you forget a giant fish man? I don't get it. But I don't know. It's one of the cooler fights because we get to see hidden. Of course, we get to see Hidden Lotus, my guy. We get to see Kisame and his tailed beast form. Everything about this fight is just quick and badass and everything. And of course, the ending is what really sticks with me because we get to see Kisame's, I don't want to say backstory, but we get to see a flashback of him talking with Itachi, basically saying nobody knows who they are before or minutes before they're about to die. And it's kind of implied throughout the series that Kisame knew Itachi wasn't evil and he knew he was kind of a spy, but Kisame just liked Itachi enough. Is like, you know what? I can't do anything about it. And it was implied that they actually were friends. And it shows Kisame's loyalty because he basically kills himself so he basically kills himself so they won't learn anything about the organization and just the plans and everything. And one of the more admittedly heart-wrenching scenes for a villain, and it ends with Guy basically finally saying, Kisame, I'm never gonna forget you. I love that fight. It's just such a good fight.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I just remembered my final honorable mention as well.
Go for it. Say it quick.
It's Sasuke versus Danzo.
Oh, Danzo. Okay, yeah.
Where you learn that pretty much this guy has been in the background. I wish there had been more build up for him had he been seen at least in the first series in some scenes, but with Danzo, because they kind of just, oh, here's Danzo. He's gonna kind of be a bad guy, anti everything the Leaf stands for, but believes he's right.
Yeah, this was a cool fight, despite the fact that Sasuke basically decides to stab Kirin and Danzo. Man, Sasuke really starts to suck at this time. And not just as a person, but more or less as a character. But that's another point for another time. But yeah, I can that fight was pretty good. That fight was pretty cool. But
the main reason I included is because you get some new powers for the Sharingan and just some interesting little things happen.
Yeah. Any notes about Guy versus Kisame before we move on to yours?
No, it's a really good fight. I mean, the fact that they capture him. I mean, this is where you learn, I think, that he's called the tailless tailed beast, isn't it?
Right.
And it's like, oh my god, that means he's on par with people who are supposed to be like the strongest people in the world, and are used as weapons, not just people, but are weapons.
Yeah, and then Killer Bee took his sword.
But it liked him. And does he still have it, or did he give it back to the village?
I have no idea, but all I know is I want one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Anyways, what's your last fight, or however many?
It's Might Guy versus Madara. I mean, this is one of the most beautifully animated parts of the thing, because there's fire, but you see I think Madara's purplish blue light, and then Guy's straight red. They've just discovered Madara can pretty much reflect everything except for taijutsu. So Guy releases the 8 gates, and for those of you who don't know, when you release all 8, you're killing yourself pretty much to save the day. You're burning up your life force to pretty much win.
Yeah, but you also get a huge ass power boost.
Yeah, we get to see pretty much. I mean, at this point, Guy's had a few good scenes, but he's been a comedic character, a foil to Kakashi, and in this, it's like, no, he is just as powerful as Kakashi, if not more.
No, this fight got me back into Naruto because, like I said, I was taking a break, and I remember I was sitting in math class my senior year of high school, and we'd already gotten done with our work, and my friend's like, "Hey, you're a Naruto fan, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, well, you might want to see what my guy's doing in the manga," and he hands me his phone, and I start reading the chapter. I'm like, "Oh my god, he's opening all of them. Is he gonna die?" And then I completely forgot about him supposedly dying, because that fight was incredible. Like, Madara was ecstatic during that fight. He's like, "Yes, this is what I want. This is what I want. You are the strongest." I'm like, "You're damn right he is." Imagine if he was around during the pain fight.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, you can feel the blows. It's emotional because every so often I think they cut to Lee, who is like the only one at first to realize what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, but he's making the sacrifice, hoping to be able to defeat him before anything happens and save the day, pretty much.
Yeah, and the whole time, it's like we also learn a little bit about Guy as a kid. We learn about his dad, and just it's a really good way to tie up his character. And it's just such a bad, like, we all know he wasn't gonna kill Madara, but just it was just amazing to see. And sure, he ends up living in the end, but there's not a whole lot more he can do at this point because he's basically crippled. You'd think Naruto would have been able to heal that or something along those lines. I don't know, but this is one of the most fantastic fights in the whole series.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking about it, Naruto got a new arm uh from Tsunade. Why didn't she grow Guy 2 legs?
I don't.
Especially because he has legs in Boruto, so that means that his legs were still intact, which means if you amputate them and reattach them, he should be able to walk again, pretty much.
Yeah, but though, being completely honest, I felt like it made more sense for Guy to die in the end than it would have for Neji to die. Neji's death still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, oh, it was meant to make Naruto and Hinata closer. I'm like, but did it? Like, really? It felt like they were already kind of close enough. Like, we didn't have to kill one of the best characters.
He, yeah, the issue I have is that they don't show any sort of relationship building there. Really, it's like, oh, it made them closer, and then you get to Naruto the Last. If you consider it canon, then they're not even dating or anything after the war, and this is like 4 years later.
Yeah, yeah. We that could be another thing we could talk about. Anime characters that should have lived or characters that should have died. That'd be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, but overall, any other fights? Anything?
No, I mean, there's a lot of other good fights that take place throughout the series, and there's probably some even in the filler arcs. But
Heck, there's probably some in Boruto, but I haven't made it that far.
yeah, he's farther than me in Boruto, so
Yeah. But anyways, what do you guys think? Did you like most of our fights? What you should have? Because if you don't like Lee versus we jokingly say if you disagree, you're wrong. But if you don't like Lee versus Gara, what are you doing? Like, I don't. What are you doing? I don't understand.
I mean, yeah, that's probably the number one fight in the entire series, just because of how action packed it is and the weight you feel from watching it.
The weight you feel was that intentional?
No, I'm sorry. It actually wasn't.
That's another thing. That's the one last thing I will say about Guy versus Madara. Guy never took his weights off.
True, but he may have taken them off beforehand because of it's actually war.
I like
'Cause
to
remember,
think. Go ahead.
remember, he says you can take them off to protect to protect something, and in the war he's protecting something. So it
I
could
like
be
to
that he.
I like to think that had he taken off the weights, he would have destroyed Madara easily. It's just 8 gates, go 8 weights, go. Oh, kills him. It's like, I'm awesome. The series is over. Let's go home.
I am now the Hokage.
I am now the Hokage. I wouldn't argue with him. Remember, they did an episode of Rock Lee and his Ninja Pals where Mike Guy was the Hokage, and everybody actually got better at with their skills and everything. It was a brilliant episode because Mike Guy was the Hokage, but that's everything. But like I said, let us know your favorite fights. Let us know if maybe some of our fights are overrated. Maybe you have some better ones, but just let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, and again, almost every fight in Naruto has something worth watching, even the bad ones. It's just some of them are definitely better than others, and that's what we like to talk about.
That's right. And there's yeah, I don't have anything else. Just let us know. Just let us know.
Yep,
This has been Foster.
and Williamson.
Finally got the pointing right. Hey, and this has been the best Naruto fights of all space, time, and filler and OVA nonsense and stuff like that. And this is the Anime Egotists saying, if you disagree, you're wrong. Unless you take your weights off, then we'll mess with you after that.